What we're going to do tonight is go to Revelation chapter 3, verse 20, all right? I'll meet you there for one verse to start with. And I don't want to run you all over the Bible tonight, but I will give you this heads-up warning that we'll be in the back of the book, we'll be in the front of the book, and we'll take a little side detour at one point into another New Testament passage. But for the most part, we're going to be in two basic stories this evening, starting with the seventh church in John's revelation of Jesus Christ and his church, his letters to the seven churches. Laodicea, there's a lot I can say, and there's a lot that needs to be said, and we're going to do that in our monthly series on that. And if you've been following along on those, you know that's coming up, and there'll be a good solid hour on Laodicea material and what it means. And so I'm not going to give you all of that tonight because that doesn't really affect where I want to land with this. It's very important stuff, and there's a lot to pull from in the church at Laodicea. But what I do want to look at is the one most famous verse, maybe most famous verse in this, at least in regards to salvation. This is often used. This is even one of those that's used. It's kind of snuck into the Romans road of salvation. It's a Revelation passage that we kind of sneak in to show people conversion. Revelation 3:20, Jesus says to the church at Laodicea, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and dine with him and he with me." And this is a text that has been used for a long time as an invitation to salvation. Jesus is standing at your door tonight, knocking. Will you say, "Yes, Lord," and let him in? And how to do that then might vary from place to place and church to church, but the basic gist is that Jesus is on the outside. He'd like to be on the inside. Won't you welcome Jesus in? And I'm not cutting the utility of that down. I am not saying that that doesn't appeal to someone who sees Jesus outside of them, and I see the utility in using that to say, hey, won't you let Jesus in? That's a good thing. But it's not what Jesus is doing. Let's just be frank. He's not talking to an unbeliever. He's not talking to the world. He's talking to his church. Now, most of us realize that, and so what we've done with Revelation 3:20 is we've made the following statement. Say, okay, he's not talking to sinners, but he's talking to a church he's not allowed in. He's talking to a church that's kicked him out. He's talking to a church that's pushed him to the outside. They're having church, but they're not having church with Jesus, and that's sort of where we've landed with Revelation 3:20. And I don't want to bust any bubbles, but that's not exactly what's happening in Laodicea. And the reason we know this is because in all seven of the churches, Jesus is in the midst of the seven candlesticks. In other words, whatever church is addressed, Jesus is in the middle of it. He's not outside of it, he's in it. And he's in it come what may. He's in it when they're good, and sometimes they are. He's in it when they're bad, and many times they are. 5 of the 7 churches have a pretty scathing rebuke about stuff they're doing, stuff they're allowing, stuff they've acquiesced to, and Jesus is pushing, saying, hey, I got something against you. I got something, but he's not against them from the parking lot. He's against it from inside. He's not away wanting to get in, and Laodicea is no exception. It's not as if Jesus has been booted out of that local church and is desiring to be back in. So realize that for the most part, the call to the 7 churches are corporate. But every now and then in the 7 churches, something interesting happens. The spotlight, which is sort of broad beam, hitting the whole church, narrows and moves in. Not to point out sin and point out error, but a spotlight that grabs the hearts of those who will open their eyes and open their ears and pay attention. And if they will, they get called into something deeper, something better. Every 7 church injunction ends with, he who has ears to hear, let him hear. He personalizes the pronoun in every church, because what he does is he speaks not just to the collective, but he speaks to the individual in the church. And he goes, no matter what your church is like, no matter how things are going, no matter if it's good, no matter if it's bad, no matter if I rebuked you, no matter if I praised you, if you're inside of that and you'll open your ears, look what you could have. And so there's statements like, blessed is he who overcomes will be granted this and that. And it is Christ speaking into the corporate church, rebuke and blessing, but also calling into the corporate church individual revelation. That I love my body as a whole. I love my bride. I'm proud of her. Look at her. But I don't want you to lose sight that you and I have something, he says. That it's not just about my church, it's about you and me. It's about our relationship. It's about me talking to you and you talking to me. And we don't just do that through Sunday morning go to meeting or Friday night meet together in the clubhouse. As great as those corporate gatherings are necessary and they're beautiful, it isn't the end of the call that Jesus has. His call is personal and beautiful and individual, and he says, he who has ears, he who overcomes, if anyone will open the door, I'll sup with him and him with me. You see, corporately, the door is wide open. Because I don't want to read ahead. You have your own copy of the Bible and have read it many times. When you turn into chapter 4, God says to John, come up here and I'll show you things that will come thereafter. And he brought him into the throne room of heaven and he saw an open door. And it's fascinating that at the end of Laodicea, Jesus is going, hey, open the door, I'll come in. At the beginning of the very next chapter in heaven, there's a door that's wide open. To the church at Philadelphia, one chapter before this, he said, I've set before you a door that is open and no man can shut. So what is this closed door business in Laodicea? I think it's the individual hearts of believers who even in the middle of his corporate church that Jesus is both rebuking and blessing, he's still calling all of us. Don't close the door on our fellowship. Don't close the door to me. I've got things I want to show you personally. Not just through your pastor, not just through the leader, not just through your denomination or through the church as a body. That's beautiful. Jesus is in the middle of that. But I think what has happened in a lot of places, and I am not pointing the finger at anyone but myself. I've learned to read the Bible that way. I don't see you when I read the Bible. I see me, because it doesn't do me a lot of good to see you. I can't do anything about you but preach to you or encourage you, but I can work on me a little bit. And what I see is there are moments where I close the door to the intimacy I could have with him, that he's knocking and he's not outside my heart as if I'm lost and need to be saved, but there might be a room, an area of intimacy that he's calling me to, that he's pulling me towards. I think this is the individual.